Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 67. 10,000 Nightmares. Hung Jun and Lu Su stood outside the garden, in front of a lone palace hall once shining with splendor on this desolate plain. The deer king Jataka described the story of a hunter who had inadvertently come across the 9-colored deer in a forest. Later, he had reported this to the king, who had brought his men with him to hunt down this deer king whose duty was to protect all living beings. But right now, the mural had already been polluted by the black chi. Lu Su said to Hung Jun, "I saw before that in the middle of the hall, there is an array. Suanu and the plague god entered the mural through that array before, and you should definitely be able to leave through that as well." As they spoke, Hung Jun suddenly remembered something, the incantation that the fox Yao had used when it was creating that sea of blood. Is it like this? From his memories, Hung Jun sketched out that array. Taken aback, Lu Su asked, "You've seen it?" Hung Jun immediately understood, this place perhaps was not the mural in its entirety, but rather an illusory realm that Suanu and the plague god had created. But just at this instant, 2 meteors streaked through the sky, plummeting into the forest behind them. Hung Jun. Lu Su unconsciously turned his head towards the source of the noise, saying, "Someone has come in." In the grove, Li Jinglong and Amorigin stood there facing each other, both completely naked. As they began to study their surroundings, Hung Jun and Lu Su had already come barging in, and Hung Jun immediately let out a loud shout. Li Jinglong strode forward, grabbed Hung Jun's wrist, and shouted, enraged, "What exactly are you two doing? Lu Su, you've woken up." Amorigin also swiftly came over, but Lu Su retreated half a step, hiding behind Hung Jun. Li Jinglong's forehead was furrowed deeply as he said earnestly, "Hung Jun, in these past few days, what exactly has been going on with you?" But Hung Jun did not reply. Lu Su had seen Hung Jun's dreams, and naturally knew what he was emotionally conflicted over, so he replied, "You guys, how about you put on clothes first, then keep talking." Li Jinglong. Lu Su raised a hand and snapped his fingers. The white light billowed forth, granting Li Jinglong a set of cloth robes, but Amorigin shook himself out and turned into the grey wolf, sprouting hair all over his body. He said in a low tone, "I'm fine." "Lu Su, is this your dream?" "I don't know," Lu Su responded. "What exactly happened?" the grey wolf then asked. As soon as Amorigin and Li Jinglong had arrived, Lu Su seemed to have put his guard up, and he was unwilling to speak much. Hung Jun looked at him, before he described the gist of what had happened before this to the two. From the beginning to the end, Li Jinglong only had eyes for Hung Jun, his eyes seemingly able to see right into the deepest part of his heart. Hung Jun felt a little self-conscious under that gaze, and he looked away. "This is a pocket dimension within the mural," Li Jinglong said after a moment of pondering as Hung Jun finished. Though Hung Jun had kept thinking about the matters of the past, when he saw Li Jinglong, he had to say that he did feel much more relieved. After all, with him here, many things could then be resolved. The grey wolf asked, "This place and the cavern that the 9-tailed heavenly fox opened up, are they built on the same principle?" "It's possible," Li Jinglong said. "But this is definitely more complex." After a short discussion, Li Jinglong and Amorigin then looked at Lu Su at the same time. Li Jinglong said solemnly, "Lu Su, you must explain the situation clearly, otherwise we are in no position to judge what is happening." Lu Su frowned. "I really do not know." What Lu Su knew about this place, he had gleaned in snatches from Suanu and the plague god. After all, ever since he was born, he had been living in this mural. Only on a few rare occasions, he had been able, through that body in the human realm, to sense his surroundings, and he didn't even know how to read Han characters. For this question, he racked his brains, trying to recall as much information as possible to give them. Back in the day, when the Buddhist monk Lezun built the Majao caves and carved out the first cavern, he used a secret art to etch many scriptures into the rock wall. The scriptures' messages were, In the 3,000 realms, there are 3,000 prajna bodhis, mt. Sumeru is contained within a single mustard seed, and so on, and they contained limitless power. And these scriptures, as the amount of time since their creation lengthened, had eroded and been made smooth by craftsmen, so they slowly vanished with the passage of time. However, its power had been preserved. Even the paintings in the many caverns, which were opened up above the scriptures, became pocket dimensions through that miraculous power. When Lezun experienced parinirva, the white deer had come west and chosen a cavern to settle its spiritual beast soul. Afterwards, when the painters of the Majayo cavern saw that the patterns in the stone of this cavern were very mysterious, they created the deer king Jataka. And what is the heart devil? Li Jinglong gave voice to the question that everyone was most concerned about. It's me, or perhaps, it would be better to say, it's the resentment of my past lives. Lu Su no longer remembered what had happened before he was reborn, and all his memories were from after that moment that he was reborn, and much of those bits and pieces of knowledge he had obtained from exchanges between Suanu and the plague god. I'm afraid it isn't resentment, the grey wolf said, watching Lu Su. It is the nightmares that you have taken away from the living beings of the world, in those long years. Perhaps, Lu Su said. Just like how in this life, we've forgotten our past lives, they have turned those nightmares into something new. Instantly, Hung Jun thought of something, and he asked, have you seen the Yao King? Lu Su thought for a bit, before replying, there was a black snake that would appear sometimes, just in front of the altar. They did indeed call him Your Majesty the Yao King too. Li Jinglong looked consideringly at that palace. The grey wolf replied, there's a protective barrier around it. The heart devil isn't here, Lu Su said. I imagine it's currently flying around, trying to find me and Hung Jun. Let's go in to take a look. Li Jinglong said. Hung Jun doesn't have his magic, so you two follow behind us. With the grey wolf leading the way, they leapt into the garden. Li Jinglong walked in rapidly, even as Hung Jun said, don't you also? But as soon as the four of them approached, the black blaze circling around the howl seemed to sense their intrusion. It whistled through the air, rushing towards them. That black blaze looked like a flying snake, undulating through the air as it rushed towards them, but Li Jinglong lifted a hand. With a single move, the power of the heart lamp erupted forth. The flying snake let out a roar of terror as that white blaze blasted it away. Hung Jun was shocked. Seems like the heart lamp has already entered my 307 po. Li Jinglong lowered his head to observe his own right hand, before lifting his head to look at Hung Jun. Hung Jun thought to himself, no wonder when I funneled my pentacolor sacred light into Li Jinglong's meridians, I couldn't find where the heart lamp was at all. Hung Jun was still reeling over that, but Li Jinglong said, go. Immediately, he raised the bright light of the heart lamp as a ward, sprinting towards the inside of the hall. After everyone had entered the mural with only the power of their souls, Hung Jun, who was very well versed in using artifacts, had become the weakest. Amorigin could become the grey wolf, while Li Jinglong had the heart lamp, so they shielded Hung Jun and Lu Su behind them. In that instant, flying snakes filled the air, but under the power of the heart lamp, they kept coiling and fleeing. Just then, Li Jinglong raised his hand up high, and the light exploded outwards, protecting them all the way into the palace. Right after, the thousands of black flying snakes on the roof of the palace once again rushed at them, funneling wildly into the hall. A bright flash of light exploded outwards, sending the black snakes flying backwards. Close the doors. Lu Su shouted. Hung Jun and Amorigin pushed the great doors to the hall closed. When they turned back, they saw that an altar had appeared in the middle of the main hall, and on top of that altar, a black spherical body floated. The air around the sphere was filled with multiple black flames, which coiled all around it. This is your heart devil? Li Jinglong asked. Lu Su watched that black ball, a look of incomprehension appearing in his eyes. Speak. Li Jinglong shouted. Yes, perhaps, Lu Su immediately responded. I haven't seen it for a long time now, how has it grown so quickly? Destroy it, the Grey Wolf roared. Only then can Lu Su's 307 Po be purified. Li Jinglong immediately reacted. Every time Lu Su left the mural, he would be swallowed up by the Heart Devil, and only within it would the Heart Devil be separated from his 307 Po. This was also the best chance to get rid of that devil. With a wave of his hand, the light in his palm shed its brilliance in all directions, and the heart lamp immediately turned into a longbow. As he drew the string, an eye-wateringly bright arrow of light appeared. That black sphere seemed to sense the danger and began to tremble violently. A rumble of thunder came from the horizon, and the heart devil that had been hunting Hung Jun down sensed that something was wrong, so a huge wave of black chi rushed in from all the windows of the palace. Li Jinglong's back and shoulders were bare, filled with vigor and power. When he drew the bow, the muscles along his arm bulged to their maximum, and he let out a loud shout, "Hit!" The arrow left the bow, speeding through the air. The devil chi surged towards that black chi, and as a huge boom rang out, it blocked the arrow shaft. That attack was swept aside before darkness billowed forth, blanketing the sky and the earth, colliding head-on with the light of the heart lamp. Li Jinglong. Countless times before, with the nine-tailed heavenly fox, the king of the corpse ghosts that fell in battle, countless Yaoguai and demons, as long as they had devil chi, they would all either retreat or be purified under the light of the heart lamp. Li Jinglong had never expected that this heart devil would actually be well matched in strength with its light. The heart lamp burned away the devil chi like a blazing fire, but even more darkness came rushing forth, instantly enveloping the entire palace. The heart devil let out a shriek, spewing out black, flame-like chi. "Watch out," the Grey Wolf shouted. Hung Jun rushed forward, grabbed Lu Su, and tumbled to the ground. Li Jinglong turned the heart lamp into a sword of light, and he pulled it to him as he ran forward. The heart devil, however, laughed coldly. "You are unable to even call out the image of Dipankara, yet you wish to use the heart lamp to exorcise me. Like a moth to the flame, you are too overconfident." In a flash, the heart devil contracted in on itself, before releasing the thousands of nightmares on the altar. They went everywhere, like meteors of darkness flying rampantly through the hall, crisscrossing in the air, chasing after the four of them. Hung Jun grabbed Lu Su. Though, at this moment, he had the urge to fight, he did not have the ability to do so, so he could only take Lu Su along in dodging. He shouted, "Lu Su, do you have any ideas?" Lu Su replied, "Head to the altar. There is an array there. Let me activate that array." Instantly, the roof of the palace collapsed in on itself from the force of the black chi colliding with it. The Grey Wolf rushed in from the side, knocked the two of them out of the way, and roared, "Get outside." The heart devil had already gathered up the black chi, and now it circled in place in front of the altar, constantly spewing dark energy towards Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong held his sword up in front of him, barely managing to brace against the attack, as he shouted, "Leave this place." Hung Jun shouted, "Amorigin! Protect us!" The Grey Wolf's pupils immediately contracted as Hung Jun grabbed Lu Su, charging towards the altar in the center. The black chi surged like a tempestuous wave towards them, heading right for the Grey Wolf. The Grey Wolf rolled in mid-air as the black chi coiled around him, but countless soldiers wielding pole arms appeared from the black chi and charged at him. With a wild roar and several sounds of impact, the Grey Wolf caused the nightmare illusions to slowly vanish. Hung Jun dodged the black chi, getting as close as 5 steps away from that altar. The heart devil, however, let out a shriek. It turned, splitting from its own body an image of sword-wielding Lu Fei, who charged viciously towards Hung Jun. Hung Jun immediately shielded Lu Su behind him and lifted his arm, forcefully blocking Black Shadow Lu Fei's attack. "Hung Jun, don't mind me!" Hung Jun shouted, before pushing Lu Su towards the altar. The Lu Fei, whose half-body was created from gathered devil qi, raised his sword and let out a loud shout, bringing it down towards Hung Jun. But when the devil qi collided into Hung Jun, things were completely different from how they were with EXORCISM and Li Jinglong. Instantly, a black flame flashed in Hung Jun's chest, sucking in Lu Fei's nightmare. With a loud bang, Hung Jun saw Lu Fei's dreamscape for a short moment. Just like the dream that first night he had when he arrived in Liangzhou, the yard was filled with bright sunlight, and the handsome young general strode slowly by the girl in the corridor. They met on that summer night, and shared a kiss under a starry sky. Right after came a fierce argument, and the girl turned and left. Neiji, Lu Fei laid on his sickbed, tightly holding onto the girl's hands. The eyes of that beautiful woman who was named Neiji were bright red, and she sobbed, "I will leave together with my lord." Lu Fei finally closed his eyes, his heart at peace. Countless images flashed before Hung Jun's eyes. As Lu Fei's body was brought into the royal mausoleum, Neiji had actually walked towards another young person's bed, slowly untying her mourning robes. In that instant, in the deepest part of Hung Jun's heart, a surge of rage roared as it rushed out. After his death, because of his lover and his own son's fickleness, Lu Jian hanged himself on a beam, and Neiji rushed out in horror, but was pulled into an embrace by his own brother, until the Ghost King pressed a hand to Lu Fei's forehead. Those matters of the past are but clouds drifting across your vision. If you come into my service, from now on, you will exist outside of the paths of life and death. Hung Jun dash. With a furious roar from Li Jinglong, bright light came shining through, and Hung Jun suddenly jolted awake to the sounds of a wolf howling. Lu Su had landed in front of the altar, and he lowered his head to study the array on the altar. But with how things were now, the heart devil had already chosen to disregard the rest of them, turning its body towards Hung Jun. Within the cloud of black humanoid silhouettes, a pair of blood-red eyes appeared. "You can actually absorb this nightmare," the heart devil snarled darkly. "Devil seed." Hung Jun took a half step back, lowering his head to stare at the black chi coiling around in front of his chest. Black smoke slowly seeped out from his chest. Lu Fei's pain had already entered his soul. That heavy hurt of losing his loved one, and all those emotions that he had felt after his death, which had caused him to feel the most primal, deepest kind of pain that existed in this realm. The heart devil shrieked, once again shooting out devil chi like black meteors. In a flash, Li Jinglong appeared in front of Hung Jun, shielding him. With a bright flash of light, he blocked all of that black chi rushing towards them. He never expected, however, that Hung Jun would press down on Li Jinglong's shoulder and push him to one side, heading fearlessly towards the heart devil. Consecutive shots of devil chi shot towards Hung Jun, the loud blasts unending as they each sank into his body. In that instant, Hung Jun felt an endless amount of despair and rage, fathers cooking their sons and consuming them, riders cutting down their own comrades with the weapons in their hands, scouts leaping off the cliff in front of them, betrayal, assassination, starvation, treading upon others. "No dash!" Li Jinglong shouted wildly. In that instant, Lu Su and EXORCISM froze, dumbfounded, only to see the devil chi around Hung Jun circling him wildly as it danced around. He closed his eyes, his expression twisted in a grimace, before they shot open again, and he roared, "Disperse!" In the next instant, Hung Jun reached a hand out, and countless nightmares circling around the hall turned at once, shooting towards his palm. They then turned into a sharp blade that sliced down towards the heart devil. The heart devil shrieked, "Devil seed dash!" Its voice suddenly cut off as the entire world shook. With that, the palace completely collapsed. The pillars snapped, exposing the sky and land, roiling with a dark haze. In that instant, Hung Jun and the heart devil both rose into the air. In these thousands of years, the grief and suffering of those nightmares that had gathered together in the human realm gathered into a vortex, which spun rapidly around Hung Jun and the heart devil. Blood-red devil marks appeared on the bare upper half of Hung Jun's body, and his eyes glowed with red light. The heart devil took on the outline of Lu Su, wildly drawing the nightmares back into its body, afraid that they would be absorbed by Hung Jun instead. "Foolish devil," Hung Jun said slowly, his voice getting deeper and hoarser. "The pain of the mortals should have long since been buried in the darkness. How did they come to be mere playthings in your hands?" Upon seeing that the situation had changed, Li Jinglong had no time to think about what to do next. He shouted, "Lu Su! Quickly! This cannot go on. Send them out dash." On the altar, Lu Su spread his hands, a silvery white light glowing from his hands, entering the altar. Outside the mural, the Ghost King, Atai and Ashinakayan were all silently watching the dear King Jataka. At this moment, a horrifying change had already come over the dear King Jataka. The original colors and images on the mural had become twisted, and two half-naked youths appeared within, black chi coiling around each of them. Below them was a wolf and a man who was glowing with light, both of them circling around the battle above. "They're almost out," the Ghost King said solemnly. Ashinakayan turned his head and glanced towards the four people who were lying next to each other. The Carpiao was holding a towel and wiping away the sweat on Hung Jun's forehead. Within the mural, the power emitting from Lu Su's hands poured endlessly into that array, which began to activate. Hung Jun and the Heart Devil turned their heads at the same time, looking towards Lu Su. With an angered roar, the Heart Devil rushed towards Lu Su, but Hung Jun was right behind it. Lu Su was hovering in the air above the altar, and Li Jinglong and the Grey Wolf rushed up at the same time. In a flash, the Heart Devil collided heavily with Lu Su, and Hung Jun let out a loud shout. "Lu Su!" Lu Su responded quietly, "After you get out, kill me. Death does not scare me. Protect your innermost heart, Gig." Lu Su spread his arms, hugging that Heart Devil that was emitting black chi everywhere. Hung Jun shouted, "No! Lu Su!" Suddenly, the Grey Wolf howled, and the vibration sent the Heart Devil, which was about to enter Lu Su's body, flying away. In the next instant, Hung Jun reached a hand out and stuck it directly into Lu Su's chest, pulling out a black humanoid figure by the hair. The black chi in his hand exploded, and thunderingly, he mercilessly tugged that Heart Devil out of Lu Su's body. As soon as Lu Su froze, the array collapsed, and a ring of light rippled outwards. At the same time, the dear King Jataka mural glowed with a bright light, spewing out after images of Hunpo and black chi that filled the sky. The Ghost King raised the rattle drum in his hand, and he shouted, "All of you, rise." Right then, Li Jinglong, Lu Su, and Emorigin opened their eyes at once. However, Hung Jun's 307 po, brimming with black chi, entered his body. "Hung Jun dash," the Carpiao exclaimed in horror, before it hopped aside. Li Jinglong immediately flipped over, ignited the heart lamp, and expelled the black chi in Hung Jun's Hunpo. But they were already nearing the end, and almost all the devil chi had been sucked into Hung Jun's heart. He opened his eyes, and they were filled with hatred. In the next instance, a Heart Devil erupted from the mural, its claws and teeth flashing. Atai and Ashinakayan struck at the same time, but the Heart Devil, surrounded by blazing devil flames, rushed out of the Majao caves. "Chase after it!" Emorigin shouted. Everyone rose and rushed after it, out of the Majao caves. In the dark of the night, the stars above were dim. The Heart Devil flew out from the third story, but the Grey Wolf trod on light as it raced towards it, roaring at it, and the Heart Devil was sent crashing back down. Atai pressed one hand on the railings as he vaulted over them, waved his godly hurricane fan, and sent blazing flames billowing forth. The Ghost King led a group of his bodyguards in leaping over the railings, flying out of the Majao caves. Lu Su was right behind them, and he shouted, "Cleanse his nightmare. Where's Xinchi?" Atai called back. Hung Jun pulled out his throwing knives, but just as he was about to rush out of the cavern, A hand reached out from behind him, latched onto his wrist, and roughly pulled him back. "You listen to me," Li Jinglong said solemnly. "You must not take in the nightmares of the heart devil." Before he could finish speaking, Li Jinglong suddenly fell victim to a solid, clean punch of Hung Jun's. That punch landed firmly on his eye socket, and it sent the world around him spinning dizzily as he almost fell over. "You've ganged up to lie to me," Hung Jun said, squeezing his fists tightly, so angry that he couldn't stop shaking. "You all knew long before, that was the devil seed." With great difficulty, Li Jinglong coughed a few times, using one hand to cover his eye. He said, "It's my fault, I lied to you, but no matter what, you cannot take in any more devil chi, Hung Jun, promise me, promise me." He managed to lift his head, his vision spinning. Anger had twisted Hung Jun's face into a grimace, but now his expression slowly smoothed out, yet in his eyes there was a trace of iciness. "Nod," Li Jinglong said. "I promise you that I will defeat it." "You will." "Definitely." "Nod. Become like how you were in the mural again." "Nod, nod for me, otherwise I will never let you leave this place." Hung Jun panted harshly, before finally nodding once and rushing right out of the Majao caves. End chapter. Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 68. Dragons and Snakes Following the Brush. At this time, the heart devil had already been trapped up high in the 9-story tower, and as it roared, its entire body emitted what looked like the fireworks of the human realm. Those were the nightmares that the white deer had collected from all the living beings' 7 emotions and 6 senses over several millennia, but at this moment, the nightmares became layer upon layer of ghostly images. Instantly, the area around them was filled with grief, suffering, and despair. Lu Su shouted, "He's let out all of the nightmares." A Tai shouted back, "You're the white deer, do you not have a way to control this?" Lu Su gritted his teeth and transformed, turning into the white deer, galloping around in the air. But because his antlers that emitted white light had already been cut off, he had no way to release more white light and absorb the nightmares filling the space around them. There were multitudes of ghostly images on the ground, ceaselessly coiling around the Ghost King and his guards. With a vengeful roar, the Ghost King shouted, "Mana!" His guards all readied their halberds in unison, sending the power within their corpse ghost neodons into their weapons, before they began to hack and slash away at the ghostly forms that pounced on them. Their weapons began to glow a dark purple, and all the nightmares that the weapons pierced dissipated. The grey wolf and the white deer were fighting in the air, and upon seeing the circumstances, A Tai put his godly hurricane fan away. He and Ashinakayan each formed their hands into hand seals. Behind A Tai appeared the image of the Zoroastrian fire god, Ahura, while behind Ashinakayan appeared the image of the Zoroastrian war god, Bahram. Both chased after those nightmares that rampaged across the sky, catching and finishing them off. Hung Jun leapt down from the Majao caves, plummeting towards the earth below, but he hadn't expected that his throwing knives would be completely useless against this sky full of nightmares. He spread open the pentacolor sacred light, but it was wholly unable to prevent the devil chi from passing through. "You go hide," the grey wolf roared, "Hung Jun." Hung Jun took a few steps back, enraged beyond belief, but without any power to act. He could only back off, once again climbing up the Majao caves. At the top of the Majao caves, Li Jinglong drew his bow. The arrow shaft glowed with white light as he anxiously watched the heart devil. The nightmares in the heart devil's body seemed endless, and it spewed out wave after wave. The grey wolf roared, "Zenchi, attack!" Li Jinglong's arrow left the string, piercing through the night sky as it shot towards the heart devil. The heart devil suddenly blew up, as if it had fallen to that blow, but it then let off even more nightmares. The Karpya yelled, "Hung Jun! Come here, quick! Hung Jun!" Hung Jun had no way at all to provide support. He could only stand on the 3rd level, watching his comrades defend against the heart devil with all their might, his heart full of various emotions. The grey wolf and white deer in the air were sending the enemies flying left and right when the grey wolf shouted at the white deer, "You go back." The white deer didn't argue either. He bounded through the air, landing by Hung Jun's side, turning back into Lu Su. Hung Jun was panting harshly, his eyes tightly closed, the depths of his heart filled with sorrow. Lu Fei's past, and the horror from the midnight dreams of all those strangers of the divine land, entangled his soul, dragging him into a patch of endless, boundless darkness. Do mortals always have to suffer through these pains? Hung Jun asked, his voice trembling. Lu Su pressed one hand on Hung Jun's back, sending what little mana that he had left into his body, helping him to escape the nightmares. Every time I was assimilated by the heart devil, Lu Su replied quietly, I would always feel this pain the most keenly, and I always believed that I would die completely. Waiting for your return became my sole hope in this pain, and has also helped me hold out until this day. But where can my hope be found? Hung Jun couldn't resist looking towards the night sky. The area before the Majao caves was already overrun with nightmares. Li Jinglong, the sword of wisdom in hand, rushed towards the battlefield filled with the specters of evil dreams, using the power of the heart lamp to hack and slash all around him. Hung Jun isn't here, right? Li Jinglong shouted. The Ghost King shouted back, he is up high. There are too many. We cannot kill them all. You must completely get rid of the heart devil. Li Jinglong replied, I have no more strength to spare. He had used the heart lamp too many times, and at this point, his heart began to throb with pain again. The grey wolf that Emorigin had turned into was fighting, entangled with the heart devil, high up in the air. Ashinakayan cried, there are too many. Hurry, think of something. We can't hold out for much longer. This was the first time that they had picked a fight with a real devil, and all of them were completely new to this, and completely unprepared. Devils were not afraid of weapons, and even less so common magics involving fire, wind, thunder, and the likes. They could only call upon the magic in their own body, using that power to fight the devil chi, forcefully blocking it. But using their magic like this depleted it drastically. They had no way to hold out until they got rid of all of the nightmares, let alone the fact that whenever they finished exorcising the nightmares on the ground, the heart devil would just release another wave. Only by taking them all in will the heart devil be completely gotten rid of, Hung Jun said. No. Lu Su shouted. Don't do this. The Carpiao suddenly shouted loudly, Hung Jun. Look. There's a dragon. A dragon is coming dash. Under the bright starry river of the night sky, a jiao flew past, glittering with silver light. It let out a dragon roar, and everyone lifted their heads to look at the sky in unison. That's a jiao, not a dragon, Hung Jun said. Who is it? Hai Mi Ho Bai Chu Yangxi's voice called out from the jiao's head, before a scholar wearing a large cloak leapt down from high up in the air, shouting, My dear comrades in arms, what are you doing? Chu Yangxi. Yangxi. Upon seeing that fresh reinforcements had come, all of them shouted at once, Quick, come and help. Chu Yangxi held his brush and looked left and right. That jiao tossed him down, before rising and flying away, its body disappearing into the night sky. As soon as Chu Yangxi saw the Ghost King, he was so frightened that he began to shout wildly. Yaoguai. Not him. Li Jinglong shouted. The shadows. Fight these shadows. Chu Yangxi kept backing up, shouting, Why are there so many? What is this? Ashinakayan, this one is also part of your guy's exorcism department. Atai. The Carpiao shouted at Chu Yangxi from up high on the Majao caves, Chu Yangxi. You pull yourself together. I'm your eldest. Chu Yangxi lifted his head to look up high, before looking back at the battlefield, and he bolstered his courage and tossed all thought out of the window. He ran a few steps back, and with a sweep of his sleeve, flew into the air. Flinging his cloak back, he lifted the landscape brush in his hands and began to cast his spell. "Help me buy some time." Qiu Yongxi sent the Jiao dragon away with a sweep of his brush, beginning to utter an incantation. At this moment, the thousands of caverns that made up the Majao caves all began to glow with a golden light, and with a weng, all the murals on the walls rose into the air. Bodhisattvas, wisdom kings, yakshas, hungry ghosts, and guardian warriors all left the murals and flew out. Golden light covered the land, and as soon as the depictions in the murals left the caverns, they surged towards the nightmares like the tide, clashing with the nightmares giving off black energy. Upon seeing that, Li Jinglong shouted, "Get the heart devil!" Atai and Ashinakayan bore down upon it from above with the godly Zoroastrian images above them, while the Ghost King and his personal guards lifted their halberds and charged forth. Li Jinglong channeled the last of the magic in him into the sword of wisdom, rushing towards the heart devil, stabbing fiercely at it. The heart devil trembled incessantly, and everyone widened their eyes, looking towards the center of the battlefield, where the heart devil was screaming wildly. "Even if you kill me, you still have no way to prevent." As the heart devil's dark, horrific voice spoke, devil chi exploded outwards, spreading in all directions. Li Jinglong braced with his sword, standing in front of that vortex of devil chi, pouring in every last drop of his magic to funnel the power of the heart lamp into that mass. The devil chi kept collapsing in on itself. Everyone watched the scene nervously. The heart devil gradually dissipated, and the nightmares around them slowly weakened, rising into the sky. The black flames of the heart devil grew weaker and weaker, revealing a circling whirlpool. Li Jinglong's sword was stuck right in the midst of it, but just as the whirlpool was about to dissipate entirely, and everyone had let out a breath, suddenly, a huge snake bursting with black fire erupted from the vortex, biting down on Li Jinglong's arm. Li Jinglong was in so much pain that he let out a loud shout as he felt that huge snake's sharp fangs pierce into his own soul. His arm throbbed with tremendous pain, and because the heart lamp's power had already run dry, his right arm began to burn with black flame. Li Jinglong! Zenshi! Everyone rushed forwards, but the huge snake rolled around on the ground, biting Li Jinglong's arm and his upper body, rising into the air. "Pitiful mortal," a voice thundered. "You have this godly power, yet you have no spells to harness it." "Xiaoyu," the Ghost King roared. "Let go of him." A noise rippled across the huge snake's entire body, echoing through the sky, a wanton wild laugh. "After destroying this heart devil seed, are you very surprised that I was hiding right here?" The huge snake had clamped down on Li Jinglong's arm and the sword of wisdom both, and Li Jinglong struggled mightily, trying to send magic power into the sword of wisdom. However, he had already used it all up. The black flame seemed to have lit his very soul aflame, causing him to suffer in this blazing fire. The Ghost King rushed up, but a wild gust of wind rose out of nowhere, and Suanu and the Plague God appeared, their robes fluttering about them. They flew towards the Ghost King and caught his blow. Suanu said harshly, "Ghost King, did you think this day would come?" The Plague God chuckled coldly. "Li Jinglong, even if you racked your brains, you would never had guessed that within the heart devil seed would actually be His Majesty the Yao King, right?" Li Jinglong kept struggling, only to hear a loud shout come from the Majao caves. That huge fiery snake suddenly widened its eyes, the devil flames on its body pulled away like they were being sucked away by a tornado. It left Li Jinglong behind, turning around and speeding in the other direction, towards its own tail. Xiaoyu opened its mouth and let out a long roar. "Hung Jun!" At this time, Hung Jun dangled in the air, his left hand grabbing Xiaoyu's tail. The black fire sped wildly towards his arm, funneling endlessly into his heart. Xiaoyu seemed to be actually unable to hold out as the devil flame slowly weakened, revealing an almost see-through shell. Li Jinglong pulled his arm out as everyone in front of the Majao caves lifted their heads to look towards Hung Jun dangling in the air. At this moment, all the devil flames on Xiaoyu's body had been absorbed by Hung Jun. As Xiaoyu roared wildly, it turned its body, its fangs gaping, biting down towards Hung Jun's head. Hung Jun's left hand held onto its tail, not letting go, as he lifted his right hand, pressing it on the snake head speeding towards himself. The devil flames accompanied that move, and Xiaoyu instantly collapsed in midair as it was destroyed, dissolving into points of light that rose towards the heavens. Suanu and the plague god were both shocked. They didn't dare to keep fighting and turned to flee, but just as they were about to escape, Hung Jun lifted his index and middle fingers in a sword fingers pose, drawing out a sigil in the air. Instantly, two streaks of black-colored flames shot out, snaring Suanu and the plague god, wrapping around their entire bodies, including their heads. The two Yao let out wails as they were shredded in the air by that flame. The land below was completely silent as Hung Jun called that devil flame back to him. His entire body was racked with pain as he slowly sank, landing on the ground. He lowered his head and looked at his own right hand, where there was a streak of black chi slowly creeping up his arm from his palm, heading towards his heart. It then began to gradually fade. Li Jinglong gripped the sword of wisdom, staggering towards Hung Jun, as if he wanted to say something. Was it to reprimand him for not upholding their promise? Or was it to blame himself for his own powerlessness? The two of them stood in front of the 9-story tower, staring silently at each other. But Hung Jun avoided his gaze, turning and walking in. The sun began to rise. All of them were tired beyond belief, and after the large battle that had lasted the night, within the exorcism department, Qiu Yangxi, Atai, Li Jinglong, Amorigin, and the Carpiao gathered together. I hadn't thought that so many things would happen, Qiu Yangxi said, letting out a long sigh. After receiving Zhenji's letter, I called upon a Jiao dragon that had once made an agreement with the Qiu family, and it flew here with me on its back without stopping. I first went to Liangzhou, and Geshuhan's large army pointed me towards Yumen. It was just as I was rushing to Yumen that I saw you guys. Li Jinglong thought for a bit, before asking, you can call upon Jiao dragons. 3 times, Qiu Yangxi said. This is the last time. Amorigin let out a long sigh, leaning on the table. He turned his head up to look at the mural on the wall inside the hall, saying, the white deer's been found, but he's lost all of his magic. Li Jinglong said, cutting off the antlers was a plan that I came up with, so the fault lies with me. Amorigin waved his hand, saying, it's no issue, we've already rescued him, so everything else is easy. Only Hung Jun, Atai said quietly, I never thought that the devil seed would actually be on him. What was that thing that appeared at the end? Li Jinglong thought deeply for a moment, before saying, the Ghost King said that Xiaoyu wants to revive Mara, but he cannot find the devil seeds. I imagine that is because it used one of its own Po as a seed to absorb the resentment gathered by the white deer through countless years of collected nightmares that were unable to be purified, thus creating this heart devil. Isn't this pretty good? Atai said, shrugging. The heart devil's been taken care of, and Xiaoyu's power has also been weakened. As long as we can ensure that the devil seed in Hung Jun's body doesn't befall any other harm, then we can manage to maintain peace. Li Jinglong ended, using his fingers to rub at the bridge of his nose. He then said, but Xiaoyu is still alive, and it won't give up on this opportunity so easily. The truth was gradually growing clear. Hung Jun had inherited one of the devil seeds in his father's, the devil god's, body, and he was supposed to become the next Mara. However, because of the twists of fate, he had been brought instead to Yaojin Palace and kept under Chongming's protection. Since Xiaoyu could not find this devil seed, he sought out another method to create one. No wonder, Amorigin murmured. No wonder what? Qiu Yangxi asked. Amorigin and Li Jinglong exchanged a glance, both of them understanding the other's thoughts. No wonder when Hung Jun was small, Yao Guai kept coming to his house to find him, and Kong Xian and Hung Jun's mother, Jia Yu's, had died to protect him. No wonder, he said, in my body, there lives a Yaoguai. Where's Hung Jun? Chu Yangxi asked. Lu Su's keeping him company, Li Jinglong replied, sighing. We have to find a way to expel that devil seed from within him. Something that even his dad could not do, Emorigin said. You think you can accomplish? Li Jinglong didn't say any more. No matter what happens, Chu Yangxi said, everyone's gathered together again. That matter of Hung Jun's, as long as we guard him, and guard him well, then it should be within our control. It's just that Zhenji will have to exhaust himself a little more. I'm afraid that I won't be able to guard him well, Li Jinglong replied. You can definitely do it. Atai said. Emorigin added, you definitely can, Zhenji, it's up to you. Chu Yangxi said earnestly, Zhenji, only you can. In the other hall, Hung Jun sat in front of the railings, leaning up against it as he watched the brilliant sunset outside. Those railings were like a prison, and through them he could see the scenery outside chopped into fragments. Lu Su, Hung Jun said, his brows furrowed. What exactly were you thinking? Are you so eager to die? Lu Su knew that Hung Jun was admonishing him for that last moment before he had activated the array. If I was to trap the heart devil in my body, Lu Su said, then it would be much easier to kill. But you would also die, Hung Jun said. Who doesn't die? Lu Su replied. If I die, then I'll just go be reborn again, that's all. Hung Jun replied, but you would no longer be able to recall your past anymore. You will have become another Lu Su. Lu Su and Hung Jun sat shoulder to shoulder, and Hung Jun reached out an arm, wrapping it around his shoulders, hugging him to the front of his body. He said lightly, you cannot do such things again in the future. N. Lu Su laid down on his side, his head pillowed on Hung Jun's legs. Hung Jun then asked, can you make me have another dream? I want to see my dad and mom. I can't, Lu Su murmured, lifting his head to look at Hung Jun's face. He reached out a hand and pressed it against his forehead, replying, my antlers haven't grown out yet. How long will that take? Hung Jun asked in response. Lu Su shook his head, his gaze lost. Hung Jun asked, was that dream real? Lu Su didn't respond, and Hung Jun's heart slowly sank. Lu Su replied, when the heart devil controlled me and made you sink into dreams, I also saw your past. That was real, Hung Jun replied. But many things about your past still remain unrevealed, Lu Su said uneasily. Your memories have been sealed, and much has been lost, especially between you and that person, Li Jinglong, from when you first met until you separated. Do you know who sealed you? Hung Jun furrowed his brow, thinking deeply, before he suddenly remembered that time when he had been stifled by the Lihun pollen and recalled that Qing Xiang was standing before him, saying a sentence to him. The memory was foggy, and he could not recall the details. Was it Qing Xiang? Hung Jun murmured. The one that sealed your memories, perhaps was also the person that sealed Li Jinglong's memories, Lu Su replied, watching Hung Jun unblinkingly. Hung Jun, your face is very pretty. Hung Jun's forehead was furrowed deeply, and when he heard these words, he came back to himself and looked at Lu Su, smiling bitterly. I'm so tired, Hung Jun said quietly. Sleep ba, Lu Su replied. When you wake up, everything will be all right. Talk about my dad some more ba, Hung Jun said as he laid down. This time, they switched spots, and it was Lu Su who was sitting as he replied, let's not talk about it anymore, it's all in the past. Hung Jun closed his eyes, and without knowing when, he fell asleep. Not long after, Li Jinglong's tall, sturdy form blocked the doorway of the hall, blocking off the sunlight, and Lu Su lifted his eyes to glance at him. He then rose and brushed past Li Jinglong as he left. Li Jinglong knelt down beside Hung Jun, who was soundly asleep, and observed him for a while. his face still sported that dark bruise from Hung Jun's punch. But not long after, he also let out a long sigh and laid down by his side. End chapter.